All right. What up, y'all? It's Nadertrons from Nadertron's World, and today I'm going to be teaching y'all how to make a species, or most people know it as a race, on D&D Beyond. I'm going to start by... Oh, I am going to start by opening one of mine. I'm not going to make a whole new species for this video just because I already have so many, and it actually takes quite a while to do the whole thing. Um, I'm going to click on one of these one that I made. So this is what you'll see whenever you actually go to make uh, the race, obviously. So you'll use a name. I do create these for 5e, so I'll make sure to put 5e in here. If you're using them for 2024, I think the notation for that is literally just 2025 or 2025. Sorry, I think no, it is 2024. Sorry, 2024. But I use 5e. This is important because obviously you don't want your players to think they're huge when they're medium, whatnot. Make sure everything here is accurate and not way too overpowered. If you make a race that's like a pumpkin person per se, I called it cucurbita, which is the scientific name for a pumpkin. Obviously they don't have a flying speed. These are arachnids. These are spider people. So they have a climbing speed. It makes sense. This is a short description. That means 1 to 3 sentences. I usually try to keep it to 3. I also usually will put, just like D&D Beyond does themselves, I usually try to do racial traits and then give like a short description of all of the things that they can get for choosing this race. Some of the stuff, it's you want to try to not make it too powerful just based off the race they use. You don't want them to be like way too overpowered just because they're some guy and their parents were some people. It's hard to balance when you're doing homebrew, obviously, but I usually go a little bit on the more powerful side. So speaking from experience, try to not do it too much. But you can see here, I made sure to write in here, advantage on perception checks that have to do with sight, or while hanging on structures such as bridges. This just, actually, don't know why I wrote this specifically, to be honest, but, yeah, anyways, climbing speed, I wrote that in here. Dark vision, I wrote that in here, and I did not put a period, so I put a period. This is your long description. This is where you give where they're from, why they're from, how they're from, stuff like that. I usually like to give a full, like, paragraph long description and then give a more specific description with bullet points. You can see here that I actually have species options here. So for the arachnids anyways, the scorpiones would be scorpions. So instead of being spider people, they're scorpion people. They're essentially the same thing, but instead of having 8 eyes, they usually have 6, and they have a scorpion tail. They can have hard shells instead of like the hairy, soft ones that spider usually have. And then one of the things that the arachnid people have is like a bloodlust. Like they love, or it's kind of like similar to werewolves in a way, where they sometimes have an uncontrollable hunger. But the Scorpiones usually have that hunger for insects, stuff like that. So it's good to give them a weakness when they're more powerful. Obviously, they have 35 feet of climbing speed just because they're this race. So it's good to be like, hey, even though you get 35 feet of climbing speed, you eat roaches. It's important to balance, obviously. RNA, this is the actual spider version. So they get things that spider would have. So the silk sacs, multiple 8 eyes, molting skin, protrusions on the body. Like kind of like spikes. Some spiders have that weird like crown-like appearance. Actually, I say it right here. Actually, uh, cravings, moths, spiders, ants, sometimes small birds. Um, Usually similar to the species they originate from. This would basically mean that if they were like a Goliath bird eater arachnid, they would want birds. But if they were a wolf spider, they would want like mosquitoes and like ants and moths at the biggest, you know? Um, and then this version of the arachnid also crave like smaller humanoids or lesser developed humanoids, as I pointed out, like goblins, orcs. It you want to get very specific in this description because this is what your character or what your players will see when they go to choose this race. This is like the whole spiel that they click on and they're like, okay, I might want to choose this race. What do I get for this race? Okay, I want to be an Exodita arachnid. I'm going to crave people. I'm going to eat people. And I'm going to have strong, thick legs that I can jump with. I'm going to have molars. I'm going to have strong, extendable molars. This is the tick arachnid. If you didn't know, ticks are arachnids. Um, so, you know, it this is kind of gross, honestly, but this one is the most craving for blood than the rest of them. This one is most similar to vampires rather than like werewolves. But anyways, so this specific race has a lot of really specific stuff I want to make sure and mention. Just examples of how they are different. This race especially is different because it's basically just like you could be a human, you could be a skeleton, you could be a goblin, and you could still get this disease basically. But for most other races, most of the stuff you're gonna have to worry about is like where they come from in the world. Are they from like a more hot climate? Because they're from a hot climate, their skin color would most likely be a lighter tone. So based on that, what are the kinds of clothes that this race would usually wear? Is this race even stuck in this one area? Are they from all around the world? You know, stuff like that. Like, for example, I'm not going to pull it up right now, but the Cucurbita, like I was talking about earlier, the pumpkin people, they're usually from like grassy knoll areas, like fields and maybe even forests, but you would never see them in like a tropical climate just because they probably couldn't even survive in a tropical climate. Um, you might even it would be even weird to see them in like a desert. Obviously, this wouldn't limit your players to only being in those areas. They would just have to have a reason for having a race of people that was from the Underdark, like a dark elf. Why are they on the surface? Why are they in space? You know, whatever reason. You want to make sure to mention where this race is from, how they got there, and why they're there, so that your players will have plenty of information to show why they are where they are, why their character is where they are, and who they are, if that makes sense. Then, once you're done with all this, here comes the fun part. This is the actual things. Whenever I close this and then I move on to this stuff, I always want to save my changes, just because if you open one of these, it's going to go back to whatever you had before. So you can see here, they get, I'll open the first one. Perception, they have advantage on perception checks. This is like I described before. This is a little different than the one before. See, the snippet or the small description is actually just the same as the longer description, because there's not much to it. I mean, this is it. This is the whole thing. You have advantage on perception checks that deal with sight and while on bridges or hanging structures. That's just it. That's the whole thing. So I don't need that much else. And then down here, you're going to want to make sure you have the actual modifier in there. Because sure, you could say they have advantage on perception checks, but when they look at their character sheet and see they don't have perception checks or advantage on perception checks, it's because you didn't fill this out too. So you want to make sure to fill this out. So let's say as a high elf, you get, I'm pretty sure anyways, as a high elf, you get like 3 spells or something like that. You get like mage hand, or no, you get to choose from 3 cantrips, I'm pretty sure. And so you would write that here. You say you can choose between 3 cantrips because of your species has been doing magic for so long. It's in your blood, it's in your genes. That means you scroll down here, click on the spells, and you add those spells. You can actually add spells. You can add them as, where are they at? I don't think it's there actually. You can add them as options. Here they are. So I could add spells, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Obviously, you know. You can say that they have to be level 2 before they can use this, whatnot, and then add the spells here, and then that would basically just mean that whenever they're choosing this race, they can go in and choose. Close too many things, but they could go in and they can choose in the perception section of their traits. They could choose out of the 3 spells that you've chosen. Obviously, that's not arachnids, don't get that. But so age is a good one. For example, literally just tells you how long they live. They reach adulthood at 18. I usually try to keep that around this number because you don't want people having underage characters be quote-unquote adults, because obvious reasons. Anyways, this is not, there's no actual things for this. This literally just tells you your race has this trait. There's no modifiers or no nothing for that. That one's a pretty easy one. You want to do these for every race. Same with the age, speed, and size. These are all very important. And then dark vision is mostly the same. Blah, blah, blah. The arachnids are a little different. You can see ultraviolet light as an arachnid. Most races just see dim light as like gray scaled. As if it were dim light. So I actually, for some reason, this is slightly different than the snippet. I don't really know why, but that's what I did. And you can see here, I give it dark vision as if it were dim light, and I did not give it a value, so they have dark vision for 60 feet, because you have to give it an amount of value. I didn't do that for some reason, but do that. But yeah, so you want to make sure, again, age, size, and speed are very important whenever you're making a race. It's not for you, it's for your players or whoever may be using this race in the future if you plan to share it online. Those are very important because obviously you want to know how old your character can be, how big they are, and how fast they are. I think size also has one of those. No, it does not. Okay, so, oh, that's right. So if they're medium, I didn't type anything in there. I'm not gonna do that right now. But if they're medium, you don't have to change anything. But let's say I'm making a large race. I am fairly certain, anyways. I need to come in here, and I need to size, and I need to change it to large, and that's it. I just want to make sure that that's it. But the base size is medium. So if your race is usually or all the time medium, obviously just make sure you write in here that they're medium, and that's it. You don't have to do anything else. But other than that, that's going to be it for this video. That's how you make a species or race on D&D Beyond. I will see y'all in the next video. Bye-bye.